Thank you very much. It's great to be here, and I'm grateful to Hope for inviting me, and thanks very much for the delicious kebab. Many of you are familiar with the change of direction that my life has taken. What many of you don't know is that I'm also now homeschooling. I don't need to rush out the house in the morning either. But as there are people coming and going every day, I have to remember to put my trousers on before 8:30. And I've also discovered that even if we turn away from the system, we still need society. Children need community. Adults need community. I'm glad that you're building yours. Just as I'm glad that my son, for example, is reaping the pleasures of forest school when he isn't playing the guitar at home with me. I could never have pictured being here at Hope, in my past life as precocious ambassador for the mainstream. Back then, I chose the state schooling system for my daughter despite her very particular educational needs. I trusted those needs would be met in the same way that I trusted our politicians, really-ish. I satirised them, sure, while shaking their hands, accepting awards from them, having a wee alongside Nick Clegg. Now I'm showing you how to draw these wicked little men in a tent. It turns out that the problems with state education are not the problems we read about in the papers. We are told that the problem with state education is that there isn't enough money for it, or that the problems are questions of style, that teachers are overly preoccupied with grammar or aren't teaching it at all. When the problem is bigger, the state education system is there to serve the state and produce a compliant, unthinking, dependent population. But these questions of financing or educational style are genuine issues for us as we try to forge strong children and strong networks across strong communities. Where did the rot generally in education begin? And how can we avoid it? Is it in the curriculum, or our need for money or accreditation? Which admin department does the devil work in? Or will our future success come down to personality, the bonds we make or break? Is hell really other people? There are challenges ahead, and I don't envy you yours. I wish you luck and grit, joy and thriving children. As an artist, my choices are simpler. Of course, I worked in newspapers my whole adult life. Ironically, despite working in newspapers, I didn't understand what real journalism was. Inasmuch as early on I understood journalism to be a mechanism by which the truth is filtered to the public. Many truths never reach the public at all. I accepted this. I'd expected it. I liked being an insider. The truths I saw being withheld or drip-fed were small details, gossip. Plans for the budget, when a snap election would be called, things learned over long lunches or hushed phone calls. But suddenly the truths being played with were fundamental moral truths. Truths that were supposed to underpin everything about our society and way of life. And their deliberate obfuscation was going to cause unimaginable suffering and death. That didn't seem as fun to me. Perhaps that's what distinguishes a real insider, someone who revels in being privy to more and more gossip, the intrigue, the chicanery, like so much dinner party chat, as if the wider consequences can always be kept at safe distance. It was when I understood I wasn't a real insider that I became a real satirist. I was never very interested in politics or journalism as a child. We weren't a political family. While there were hundreds of books in the house, there was rarely a newspaper. I loved to draw. From the moment I could hold a pencil, I drew. I drew what I saw, and I always saw the world and the people in it in this glorious way that we know as the cartoon. When I discovered you could make a career of cartooning, I knew that's what I had to do. That the cartoonist exists in the pages of newspapers was fine with me. It meant a bigger audience for my jokes. I started at the Telegraph at 25. What a jammy sod. I'd made it. I guess my dream was to die at that desk. It didn't work out like that. It worked out better. I'm here today to share my book, an illustrated record of the strange times we've been living in, and my thought process in this period. And really, this is what art is, a thought process. We're sold the idea that it's about success or recognition or money, but it's about expressing yourself. That must be its own reward if it's to be art at all. Everything else is embellishment. The book is dedicated to my parents, my first victims. They can't take credit or blame for teaching me how to draw. Most of that goes to Rolf Harris. But they can take credit for my understanding of what to do with this strange gift. The pictures I've created over the past 4 years all illustrate simple values. My parents take credit for those and for giving me the courage to defend my principles. People have been asking me to do a book since 2020. I was reticent. I didn't want to bring it out too early. What man does? And besides, everyone already has a Giles annual in their loo. Not that I mind where you choose to keep this book. It's up to you. The paper is conveniently strong and smooth. But I did want to make something special that reflected how much some of these images mean, the significance of this period, and my appreciation for everyone who's helped to share my cartoons around the world. I hope it was worth waiting for. Thank you. Well, countless subsidiary industries have sprung up around publishing. This is all well and good until it isn't. Some of these industries are creative, others are entirely parasitic. Our current cancel culture is probably an inevitable effect of PR. If you can generate publicity and guide sales with controversy, something of nothing, then in time this will ripple out across the board. The controversies can be generated from less and less and will impact an agent, a publishing house, a distribution deal. Everything becomes another layer of bureaucracy, of sensitivities, of anticipation of potential sensitivities. All these mechanisms of censorship form the household names that then form the opinions of the household. I didn't want to censor my images. My audience has stayed with me because I don't compromise. My cartoons resurface because truths remain the same. I didn't create this book because I want to garner a rave review in The Guardian, or to find a new audience next to David Walliams in Waterstones, but to create something for the people that have supported me. My supporters like the provocative, dangerous images, usually. They do not want a catalogue where an editor has said their favourite images can't be included, and I don't either. I didn't always understand the machinations of journalism, and it turned out I knew even less about publishing a book. There are practical issues in putting a book together: layout, typesetting, page numbering, what paper to choose, and all the other technical details I had absolutely no clue about. I had help from friends that agreed with me and from friends that didn't. I'm grateful for this common respect for the creative space. Our freedom of expression, conscience, and association relies on people that do not necessarily agree, recognizing sincerity of intention. The more reasons we're given not to work together, the easier we are to divide. In some ways, taking the opposite path to the mainstream is simpler because it is clearer. But it is also important to remember that we are a society. The only people that benefit from our divisions is an elite group of the exclusively compromised. Their agenda can only be enforced on us by our neighbours. Our neighbours might not yet see our fight as theirs. By keeping our lines of communication open, perhaps we can dissuade them from making our fight harder. At my wonderful printer's, Henry Ling, I found on the floor that ordinary people who know something is up, even if they're not sure exactly what, enjoyed this chronicle. We can forget, because of the voices that are amplified, that there are many silent observers who we can reach out to in friendship. Personally, it's been wonderful to see my pictures in a book. I create my work in a traditional way. I draw and ink and paint my cartoons on watercolour paper, and I love the process of making a physical object. but in order to share them with the world, I scan them on my computer and post them online. Most people only know the digital version of my work and have only ever viewed it on a backlit screen, often surrounded by all the other digital content we choose to bombard ourselves with every day. It's a different experience seeing them printed. And even if they're not true to size, my originals are sometimes bigger, sometimes smaller, this is much closer than their digital reproduction. I immediately understood on seeing the first proofs come off the press that we engage with images in a different way when we're holding them in our hands, printed on paper. Even I noticed things in my pictures I had forgotten or hadn't spotted before, including some mistakes. I think there is great value in producing something by hand, in the time it takes and the thought it demands, which we forget in our hurry to get with the program. We instinctively appreciate an object created with care and attention, and we are at risk of losing this. The subtle but inescapable imperfections between brain and brush are part of what makes something beautiful, that gives it soul and that makes it human. This is why I hate AI. It's not just that artificial intelligence sells itself on the premise that hands are obsolete. It's that it can't do hands, or faces, or feelings. Artificial intelligence is artificial. True intelligence is to understand how to look at something and see beyond the superficial. A likeness, a character, a mood, those intangible qualities that we know as our consciousness. AI is not able to see the world as we see it, but our enthusiasm for the technology might be able to condition us to respond to the world in this limited way. It's not about how AI might improve, but about how quickly we can fall. I look at the content people make and share with these programs, and I think we're falling faster than we realize. I spend hours laboring over and worrying about a picture. I think everything through. It's a conversation I'm having with the viewer who will also play their part. The most difficult decision for any artist is deciding when you've finished. All this disappears with digital content creation. At least a meme maker might spend a moment considering the wording of their speech bubble. AI art only requires a request. Keir Starmer riots, Kamala Harris communism, copy Bob Moran's George Orwell cartoon. This level of mindlessness is degrading. It's beyond degenerate. It is the nadir. I understand that its popularity might be another illusion generated by an algorithm, but algorithms do guide taste. They do form opinion. I believe that if we don't make a conscious effort to resist this rubbish, its popularity could become real, and we will surrender the greatest gift we have, creativity. This gift doesn't only belong to those that can make things of beauty, it belongs to those who appreciate beauty and grow from it. But back to my book. I have obviously benefited hugely from the internet, but as someone who knows that an audience can be removed from them, I wanted to be able to share a physical copy of my work. A book can't be deleted at the click of a button. It has to be burned. Perfect for toasting marshmallows. When I was sacked by the Telegraph, it was supposed to be the end of my career. My audience, the prestige of a brand, financial security, political affiliation, gone. All I had was my skills, my messages, and faith that that would be enough. It was more than enough. It's true that if I want to wear wellies and drink cider with the like-minded, it requires a different kind of battle. But when I was damned to the periphery, I discovered that that is where satire flourishes. It is from the outside that you are able, that you allow yourself to consider the bigger picture. It is from the outside that I came into my own. Because it is only with independence that you can attack any angle without fear or favour. My thoughts develop, my tone shifts, the topics I cover change, but my principles remain the same. This is what has made the last 5 years special to me. It's what presenting my pictures together shows. Grounded by this consistency, it's always interesting to me when advocates or detractors really hate an image or see it as out of character. I've heard I don't understand the meaning of my own work. I wonder if this is part of a general delusion that allows people to pretend something can be meticulously delivered entirely by accident or in a fit of incompetence. I've heard I've got it wrong. I think this is because the relentless drive to uniformity of opinion has left some people unable to carry an idea without the fiction of total concurrence. and they imagine that means I can't carry an idea either. I've heard my work is dangerous, and I know for certain that means it's been shared widely, and they don't like that. There is definitely a push to stop people expressing themselves artistically today. This hydra has many heads: social, legal, basic physical threats. But the more insidious attack on creativity is the sometimes innocent suggestion that you can be frightened away from drawing one thing, but should still be brave enough to draw something else. It doesn't work like that. All these ideas are from the same thought process. I now see everything as part of the same story, but I understand some people haven't noticed anything at all. And those that have noticed something aren't necessarily ready for Big Mike. That's okay. This didn't begin for me with a grand conspiracy. It didn't begin with an intricate knowledge of Agenda 2030 or the administrative intrigues of the World Economic Forum. I came to my position not from the things I couldn't grasp, but from the simplest things I could: our duty to our children, defence of private life, rejection of a state of fear. We should feel more confident about sticking to these small answers, because they are the cornerstone. We are being presented with stories in a way that suggests there is a story that can justify abandoning our moral foundations. This is the wrong way up. It is an inversion. Our moral foundations must survive any story. If we can persist in showing things the right way up, I will not leave my grandmother to die alone. It is harder to pervert these basics into being with my grandmother as she dies will kill her. Again, it is important that we remember this now, when so many are inclined to smoke the hopium and forget that we are the answer. No one out there in our country or someone else's is going to save us or fly us to Mars. We are continually presented with the problem and the solution, as if they are the same thing. Rejecting an appalling solution does not mean you deny that there is a problem. It is that the proposed solution cannot be justified. There are certain things that all these supranationally coordinated solutions have in common: vast amounts of money, collaboration at a global level between corporations and governments, and uniformity in mainstream media output. But most significantly, all these problems require us to delegate. We are being asked to outsource our skills, our production of food, the care of our family members, the education of our children, the condition of our environment, the drift of our conversations, how we share our information, our thoughts themselves, until we cannot trust what we can see in front of us. Of course, for many of us here, we don't accept the problem either. It's true that the response to the pandemic was always wrong, but it is also true that most of us don't believe in the pandemic. In much the same way, we may reject the solution to climate change as the carbon collector in favour of the tree. But we also challenge the climate problem. This is more frightening. We are in a position whereby, for many different reasons, we can see a story other people can't see. It's demoralizing because this has clearly happened before, and probably forms much of what we understand as history. The official stories self-perpetuate, but there is a reason that people come back to eternal truths, and that is that they are truths and they are eternal. As for my book, I neither want nor expect every person that sees it to enjoy every cartoon. That would be really boring. I do expect every person to buy one. I will be happy if my book starts some memorable conversations, or at least can be wielded as an excuse for many ruined picnics. I hope that a lot of people will have this book in their houses, or at least have an opportunity to see it and flick through it at some point, because this is a book full of ideas that were systematically and relentlessly labelled as dangerous, controversial, backward. They are ideas that are under attack. But they aren't just my ideas, they are noble ideas, and they're shared by millions of people around the world, very strongly. Ideas that people remembered when they were ordered to forget. But it is also a record of all our efforts in this period. When people argue no one could have known, it is simply not true. People did know, and they did speak out. And they kept on speaking out, even when they were demonized and vilified. I'm grateful to all those people. I hope our number grows. I want future generations to know that we pushed back against the official narrative, so that when this happens again, they too feel able to stand firm. Thank you very much.